in the era of COVID-19. It's hard to believe that we gathered together as a community on a call very similar to this only a few days ago, I think last week, and the challenges that we are facing have become greater. They've become more complex. Certainly our lives have become more challenging. But the resilience and the creativity in addressing those challenges, the support, the unity of the Jewish community, and in fact the broader world and society has also become profoundly greater. And so we decided that it would be beneficial to all of us to convene once again to reflect on the new environment within which we find ourselves. Many of us find ourselves in an entirely new context, in an entirely new landscape, without our traditional opportunities of engaging in shul, in other social outlets, in our children being in school. And so we brought together the experts and the resources of Yeshiva University who are extremely busy servicing and helping so many other people and so many other organizations. But we wanted to bring everyone home for a few minutes so that we could kind of gather and get some direction, inspiration, and guidance in so many significant areas of our life as we continue to persevere in this great challenge of our era. So allow me to please introduce the president of Yeshiva University, who's been hard at work galvanizing all of our resources in service of our students and our broader community to address these challenges, Rabbi Dr. Ari Berman.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Glasser. Thank you so much for what you've done now and throughout this time. It really is hard to believe that we're here. This is an unprecedented time in history. Yeshiva University was at the really the peak, the first point, just 13 days ago. Before this virus spread all throughout the city, the states, and the effect that it's having in America. And, it was hard to even imagine the experience then, and then now, 13 days later, where we are today. I just wanted to mention one small point as we shift to this time period that we're in, where so many of us are at home, working remote, together with, in our homes, with our families, by ourselves. A thought that I heard from Tal Ben Shachar, the famed professor in positive psychology, friend of Dr. Pelcovitz, who said to me once that, what's the first word that we start with every day? What's the first word that we say every day? And he said, modeh. Right? We say, not even modeh ani, the first word is modeh, it's thanks. He said that the idea of starting off every day by saying thanks is a profound moment that our tradition is enabling us to lead a life that can be filled with success and filled with happiness. So that happiness and success is based on positivity. That throughout any time, even in dark times, one must first open and start with, what am I grateful for? What do I appreciate? And you're supposed to build off of that. Build off the positive. Look at what you appreciate. Look for what you're grateful. Like that's how to lead a happy, successful life. And I think about that, today. I think about that in all of our challenged circumstance. How do we begin by looking at what we're thankful for, the brachot. And with all of the tirchot and the difficulties and challenges of perhaps, let's say, being at home, the brachot that's around us should be the launching point in which we can then build the rest of our day and the rest of our whole perspective. The modeh to Hashem, to thank Hashem for what we have, and to build off of the positive. I also think of that because of the people on the phone with me. I have to say that I have been so totally blown away by the dedication, professionalism, by the real, just the humanity, the decency, and the Jewish values that emerge from every single person in the YU community, in our sphere, as they deal with this, and they deal with the challenges for their own lives, but for the community, and just everything there. It's so impressive, and it so brings everything we learn in the Torah to life. And everyone on the phone right now, I just want to say I have a deep personal hakarat hatov to Rabbi Yaakov Glasser, who has just been instrumental in galvanizing the forces in our community throughout the Rabbanim and throughout our Yeshiva University, for all of our students and for the greater community. Rabbi Ari Leibowitz, ein milim, mamash, for the courage and the strength and the wisdom, and just unbelievable. And Rona, what you do, and teaching parents how to educate their children throughout this crisis and throughout this time, and David and Dr. Pelcovitz, it's unbelievable. The resources that we have on the line and the amount of people that turn to you and turn to each of the people here, and the givingness. I just wanted to open up by just saying thank you to our speakers. And it's just a zchut for me to be in this community and to be amongst you. So, modeh ani to Hashem for everything that He's giving me, that He gives us, and thank you for giving of yourself to Am Yisrael. Thank you so much, Rabbi Glasser.
Thank you, Rabbi Berman, for those incredibly encouraging words for our Yeshiva University community and our staff. One of the most inspiring things to watch through this entire experience is the level of tenacity that the Jewish community has to try to ensure that no matter what challenges we are confronting, we are able to continue to live our lives in the context of observance of Torah and mitzvot. And to watch, just to have been part of many of the conversations that took place among Rabbanim across the country as we had to make excruciating decisions about closing shuls, to watch the palpable emotion and then to watch the efforts turn so quickly and so passionately and so creatively to how to recreate the environment of our spiritual Jewish community in a totally new context. And it's really incredible, and it really does show us. It really does show us the eternal nature of the Jewish people. It shows us why we've been able to persevere through so many generations and so many challenges, because no matter what happens, we figure it out. So with that, I would like to introduce Rabbi Ari Leibowitz, who's going to share with us some of the halachic issues that we've all been facing as we transition a lot of our tefillah, as we transition a lot of our learning out of our more bricks and mortar frameworks and into our homes, and for him to share with us some of those halachic issues and how we can address them, to give us guidance and to give us clarity. Rabbi Leibowitz.
Thank you very much. I want to also thank Rabbi Dr. Berman and Rabbi Glasser for their extraordinary leadership. Now, while I'm going to have the same amount of time, I believe, as the other speakers, there should be no doubt in anyone's mind that my portion of this phone call is significantly less important than the other two. Meaning, as we're evolving in this new reality that we're living in, it's become more and more clear that the primary concern, certainly as a community rabbi, is the emotional trauma that people are suffering. Now, as a community rabbi, the way that I deal with emotional trauma, the way that I get through it, is by going back into the Dalet Amos of halacha. So I'm very grateful to be able to talk a little bit about halacha and about specifically what it means to daven at home and how we can maximize that and understand how to do it properly. Now, it is quite remarkable that so many people are at a total loss when davening b'yechidus because they're so used to going to shul. And what a beautiful statement that is about the role of tefillah b'tzibur in our daily lives. The fact that it's so disorienting speaks to our connection to our batei kinesios, to our batei medrash, and we should commit to never take that for granted ever again. Now let's be very clear. At this time, minyan is simply not an option for us. Shul staying open at this time is reckless and in many places illegal. Our poskim in yeshiva, Morenu Harav Shachter Shlita, Morenu Harav Willig Shlita, have discouraged outdoor minyanim, and I believe that's with very good reason. See, we're not always so great at following rules, and that could often lead to a blurring of the lines. Rabbi Willig said it so beautifully when he said that saying Kaddish, while a deeply emotional thing and something that really connects a person for an aliyas neshama to their departed loved one, saying Kaddish is ultimately about the great zechus of Kiddush Hashem. And today the Kiddush Hashem is in making sure that humanity remains safe, or as safe as possible. Now, while it's true that Rav Shachter allows for answering Amen and Davar Shabbat to a minyan over a Zoom conference, and that is something we discussed a little bit last time, I should make it clear that that is only when there's a minyan of people somewhere together in one place, and we're being zoomed in together with them. It does not work when you have 10 people in disparate locations, though emotionally that is a very healthy thing, to connect people in different places and at least daven at the same time and to see each other davening. And the truth is we should discuss Pesach at some later time, Tainis Bechorim and selling chametz and guidance for those making Pesach for the first time, but that's not going to be for today. For today we're going to talk about davening in the home. So the halachic issues are many. Let's start with some of them. There is a halacha of makom kavua. The Gemara tells us in Maseches Brachos Davav that Amar Rabbi Chelba Amar Rav Huna kol hakovea makom letfilah. So someone who sets a specific location for davening, Elokei Avraham be'ezro. The God of Abraham will aid him, will help him. Ukeshemeis and when such a person passes on, they're going to say about him how humble he was and what a chassid he was. And the Rabbeinu Yonah explains that setting a location for tefillah on its own does not guarantee that you're deserving of such praise. That praise of a chassid, the Gemara in Sanhedrin uses to describe one of the great tzaddikim in Jewish history, Shmuel HaKatan. No, it indicates that you value proper tefillah and that we approach Hashem humbly with no sense of entitlement. And it's that attitude of humility that brings to Chasidus and elevates the entire person. Shulchan Aruch and Siman Tzadi Ches says that being Kovei Makom is part of the link between Tefillah and Karbanos. Every Karban has a specific location for the Shechita and for the Matan Dam, and that lends a sense of formality to the Tefillah. And that's particularly true when davening at home, particularly important when davening at home, that we should have a place in our house where we go to daven. In fact, the Tzlach and the Sfas Emes point out that there's a cumulative effect of the tefillos offered in a given location, and that helps to elevate that location. There's even an opinion in Rishonim that the whole idea of being Kovei Makom L'Tfilah so is only for somebody who davens in his home. That's what Rabbeinu Yonah writes. If davening in shul, you don't need to be Kovei Makom. The whole place is a Makom Tfilah. But when davening in the home, to set aside a spot in the house that becomes a makom tefillah, that's where it's particularly critically important. Another issue that comes up that a lot of people are confused about is davening in front of a window. Many people believe that there's some sort of prohibition to daven in front of a window. The reality is that the opposite is in fact true. The Gemara in Brachos Daf Lamed Aleph says that a person should daven specifically in a bayis sheish bo chalonos, a room that has windows, and the Shulchan Aruch quotes us that la halacha that you should daven in front of a window that faces toward Yerushalayim. Mishnah Berurah quotes from Magen Avram that it's especially important to do so again when davening at home, when davening b'yichidus. In fact, the Kesef Mishnah in the 5th parak of Hilchos Tefillah quotes the Tshuvas HaRambam that it's only true when davening in a house. So one should daven in front of a window. Why? What's the value of davening in front of a window? Rabbi Yonah suggests that the natural light gives a person a sense of comfort, a sense of Yishuv Hadas, or maybe a person feels more connected to Yerushalayim when looking out his window and not feeling enclosed by his home. Rashi writes that it helps with kavana. You can look up to the Shemayim, and that helps a person have proper kavana. What about davening? The Gemara says in Yevamos Daf Kuf Hey that a person is supposed to look down when he's davening. How do we reconcile that with davening in front of a window? So the Beis Yosef writes, yes, we look down, and every once in a while we look up to refocus, to look at Shemayim, and to refocus our kavana. Another halacha that is not so well known, the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Tzadi writes, based on the Gemara in Brachos Daf Hey, that a person should daven facing a wall, meaning there shouldn't be other things interrupting between you and the end of the room, not begadim etziyorim, not things that are distracting. So if the window that you're looking out of is a window that you see people walking by the street, that is not ideal. It should be somewhere where you could just see the heavens, you could see the treetops, you could see something, but you won't be easily distracted. The Mishnah Berurah points out that the reason we're not so makpid about always davening in front of a wall was because it would be an architectural impossibility to set up shuls where every single seat is in front of a wall. It wouldn't be possible. But when we're davening in our own homes and we have the ability to daven in front of a wall, meaning to daven in a place with no distractions, and I would add, without our cell phones on us, perhaps better yet to have our cell phones in an entirely different room, so that's certainly the better thing to do. Another halacha that people sometimes are unaware of is that the Shulchan Aruch writes in Siman Pei Gimel that one has to be careful about the environment around where he's davening, that a person cannot daven keneged beis hakisei. Certainly if there's a bathroom door open right next to the place where you're davening, that door should be closed. Rav Moshe Feinstein in the Tshuva in Igros Moshe, or Chaim Chelek Aleph Siman Lamed Aleph, says that just as Chazal say that there's a maila to daven in the place that you learn, you should specifically avoid davening in a room that's designated for what he calls schok v'kalus rosh. That which happens in that room has an important impact on one's tefillah. So one should choose a room in their house where the activities that go on in the room are a proper reflection of the attitude that one should have towards tefillah. The Gemara Maseches Brachos Daf Chaf Hey is clear that one cannot daven in front of erva. A lot of times people don't realize, they think that I'm only around family members, so it's okay to daven even if not everyone is dressed appropriately, but there is an objective problem with davening in front of erva, so one should be careful to make sure that everyone is dressed appropriately in the room where one davens. In fact, Moreinu Hagon Rav Shachter Shlita in his Sefer Eretz HaTzvi, Simin Yud Beis, Os Yud Aleph, highlights the particular value of tznius in developing a sense of Hashras Hashchina, in creating a sense of Hashras Hashchina. He has 4 proofs to that idea, not something I'm going to get into right now. There are a number of changes in text that also are worthwhile considering. Moreinu Rav Shachter Shlita has suggested that we should add Avinu Malkeinu into our Shachris and our Mincha every day. The idea of Avinu Malkeinu, Gemara in Maseches Tainis on Daf Chaf Hey. The Gemara tells us, Ma'aseh Rabbi Eliezer sheyarad lifnei hateva va'amar esrim va'arba brachos v'lo nena, that there was a particular Sarah, there was a lack of rain, and Rabbi Eliezer went to daven in front of the Amud, and he said 24 brachos, as one does on a fast day, but he was not answered. Yarad, the rain did not come. Yarad Rabbi Akiva acharav. Rabbi Akiva came, va'amar, Avinu Malkeinu ein lanu melech ela ata. Avinu Malkeinu rachem aleinu. That he said this prayer of Avinu Malkeinu, acknowledging that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in charge of everything, and that we are in desperate need of his rachamim. And the Gemara tells us, v'yardu geshamim, and that's when it rained. The Levush points out that the various lines in Avinu Malkeinu correspond to the brachos of Shemona Esrei, but it seems pretty clear. One does not require a minyan to say Avinu Malkeinu, and Avinu Malkeinu is not about a fast day or a Seres Yimei Tshuva. It's about an Eis Tzara. It's about a time of great need, and this is certainly such a time. Rav Shachter pointed out, certainly not on Mincha and Erev Shabbos, times when we should not say Avinu Malkeinu, but throughout the rest of the tefillos, Shachris and Mincha, it's an appropriate thing to add. Another appropriate thing to add to the tefillah that many have suggested, there's a now famous letter from Rabbi Kiva Eger and Siman Ayin Aleph that at a Shas Magefa, at a time of a plague, one should recite Pitum Aktores at both Shachris and Mincha. And that's based on the power of Ketores to stop a Magefa. We find that the Malach HaMaves instructed Aaron HaKohen. Rashi tells us in Chumash that the Ketores is what should be used to stop a Magefa. We don't have actual Ketores anymore, but the Gemara tells us in a number of places we have the notion of an Shalma Parim Sfasenu, that when we say things, when we recite things, when we learn things, it's as if we are bringing those karbanos that we are speaking about. That's the whole idea of saying karbanos each and every day. And therefore, a number of people have suggested maybe saying ketores on a more consistent basis. Also, there's a major discussion about Kriyas HaTorah. People are unsure what to do. Shabbos morning, you're davening. How do you not have a Kriyas HaTorah? You know, the truth is we're going to have a very interesting shaila when all of this is over, God willing, about how to make up for all of the lost parshios. I mean, we are supposed to complete the Torah each and every year. The Ramah writes that a tzibur that misses a parsha should read 2 parshios the next week. But it's not as clear if one misses, or a tzibur misses multiple parshios, that there's any way to really make all of that up, or if that's too much of a tircha de tzibura, we're going to leave that to the great poskim of our community to deal with when the time comes. But as far as on a Shabbos morning, Rav Willig suggested last Shabbos that we should each take out a Chumash and read from the Chumash as a Zecher to the Kriyas HaTorah. The reality is that is based on a comment that the Mishnah Brura has. The Mishnah Brura in Sim Kuf Mem Gimel, Siv Katan Tes, writes that if you don't have a Sefer Torah, you should read from a Chumash, Shelo Tishtakach Torah's Kriya. Now the truth is, the Mishnah Brura is talking about a minyan, a tzibur that does not have a Sefer Torah, that they should read from a Chumash, because Kriyas HaTorah most assume is a Chovas HaTzibur, and even if it's a Chovas HaYachid, even if it's an individual obligation, it's something that we can only do when we are B'tzibur. But Rabbi Willig thought it would be a good idea to read from the Chumash. I would just suggest that at the very least we have to do Shnayim Mikra Ve'echa Targum anyway. We have to read the weekly parsha twice, once the Targum anyway. So maybe use that time in between Shachris and Musaf to read the psukim from that week's parsha, and that way we'll have accomplished both things. Now there are a couple of things about the style of tefillah that I think are worth considering. Most importantly, in my mind, is that one of the things the Gemara in Maseches Brachos Daf Lamed Aleph derives from the tefillah of Chana is that a person is supposed to daven quietly. In fact, the Gemara 7 blot earlier in Brachos Daf Chav Dalid says Hamashmiya kolo b'tfilasa areza miktane amana, that a person who davens loudly is showing a lack of emuna. Hamagbiya kolo b'tfilaso hareza miniviyei hasheker, he's even compared to a false prophet. The Gemara in Sota Daf Lamed Beis says that ma tiknu tefila b'lachash. Why did Chazal institute that we're supposed to daven quietly? Kidei shelo levayesh es ovrei avera, not to embarrass people who do averos. People sometimes are going to be saying viduyim, they're going to be confessing their sins in their tefillah. We don't want people to have to do that out loud. But on the other hand, the Ramban in Parshas Bo and Tosfos in Masechus Rosh Hashanah seem to highlight the value of davening loudly sometimes. And the truth is, the Gemara tells us in Brachos Daf Chav Dalid that if a person is davening b'yechidus, he's davening alone, and it's going to help with the kavana, then you can and should daven out loud. The Taz in Siman Kuf Aleph even suggests that if a person is unable to have kavanah when davening with a minyan, and because he has to daven quietly, and the only way to be ma'orer, proper kavanah, to inspire proper kavanah, is to daven alone and out loud, that may be the better of the two options. Now, we're not going to go that far. God willing, when we have the ability to daven with a minyan, we are eagerly going to run back to shul and daven with a minyan. But in the meantime, it's not a bad idea to daven out loud, especially when you consider that the Torah quotes from the Yerushalmi that if you have children around the house, then it's a particularly good idea to daven out loud, so that the children can hear what it sounds like when their parents talk to Hashem. We've all seen children try to mimic davening, where they just put a siddur in front of their face and make sounds that you can't even hear anything, and they're not even saying anything, because in their minds that's what tefillah is. So we have an opportunity that we don't often have to actually model what tefillah sounds like, what a person sounds like when they're connecting to the Ribono Shel Olam. Now, the major question is raised about the timing of davening, whether one should daven vasikin or one should daven when the tzibor davens. So the Gemara, again in Maseches Brachos, Tav Yomi really prepared us for this, talks about the value of tefillah kevasikin. In fact, Tosos explains that one who fulfills smichas gula l'tefillah at sunrise is going to be protected from harm on that day. The Shulchan Aruch in Siman Peites talks about the importance and the great reward of those who daven kevasikin. But if a person has an option of tefillah b'tzibur, the Bir Halacha writes that a person who davens consistently kevasikin, that's a greater value even than tefillah b'tzibur. Many other poskim disagree and say that tefillah b'tzibur is in fact the greater value. But when we don't have the option of tefillah b'tzibur, it seems obvious that tefillah kevasikin is ideal. It happens to be, because we just recently changed the clock, that tefillah kevasikin is actually not that late. It's not that early, rather. It's kind of late these days. It's around 7 a.m., and if one can arrange that, that would seem to be the best. I have to confess, in my shul, I did not do that, because I kept my daf yomi at the regular time. People said, why are you doing that? Let's move the daf earlier. Let's move the daf later. We're missing out on tefillah kevasikin. And I thought that maintaining a sense of normalcy and a sense of consistency is even more important than tefillah kevasikin. But I could be terribly wrong about that, but that was my sense, and I know certainly to keep me sane, I needed that. Someone else pointed out to me that typically speaking, we just learned in today's daf, a person is not allowed to eat once the Zman of Tefillah arrives, even when within a half hour of the Zman of Tefillah. And what we normally rely on when we eat our dinner before we've davened Mariv is that we have a minyan kavua. If we no longer have a minyan kavua, it is more difficult to rely on that. It's probably advisable that a person sets an alarm to remind themselves to daven Mariv later, or to have at least Zmanim kavuim within their home that their children know now is the time for Mariv, and everyone's going to gather in the living room, in the study, wherever it may be, and daven together. I just want to conclude that Rav Moshe Feinstein holds in his shuvos that minyan is a chiyuv, Moreinu Rav Shechter thought it's more logical to assume, like what the Emek Bracha writes, that the idea of davening v'tzibur is icing on the cake of tefillah. It's an enhancement of tefillah, but it's not an absolute chiyuv. So davening without a minyan doesn't rob us necessarily of a chiyuv, but it robs us of a very, very important enhancement. And when we lose the opportunity for that enhancement, we have to work on an opportunity for other enhancements of our tefillah. Deeper kavanah, saying the words more slowly. Take the time on a Monday and Thursday to say every word of Uhu Rachum. You probably never in your life have the chance to do that. And as the Gemara Maseches Brachos Daf Lamed Aleph tells us, Ein omden mit leispalel lo mitoch atzvus. A person cannot daven when they are sad. That's not the attitude to go into tefillah. The Gemara goes on after a little bit and says, Ela mitoch Simcha shel mitzvah. A person has to have a sense of joy when he approaches his tefillah, even in challenging times, even when things are difficult. We have to smile. We have to smile around our house, even if we don't feel like smiling. And we have to have a sense of simcha as we have the opportunity to approach the Ribono Shel Olam in tefillah. And be'ezras Hashem, He will hear all of our tefillos and respond with great rachamei shamayim for us and for all of humanity.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Leibowitz. We so appreciate that erudite presentation of all those issues, and we thank you for giving us your time. Our next speaker is Dr. Rona Novick, who is the Dean of the Azrieli Graduate School of Jewish Education and Administration, and her topic is parenting and educating in a new reality. I think that for many of us, even the distinction between parenting and educating has become completely overlapped in our homes, as we have become the administrators of all of our own home schools. And I have to share that perhaps one of my moments of relief from all of this was walking into the room and watching my 5th grade daughter get on a Zoom call for the first time with 20 of her classmates, none of whom could hear each other over each other, and then watching the teacher mute them all in one moment, and the sense of satisfaction on her face that she was able to accomplish such a thing. I think she finally found some sweet spot of not being in the classroom for this particular time. But the truth is that all of us know the challenges of maintaining a certain sense of structure, a certain sense of discipline, a certain sense of encouragement and direction and guidance for our children at this time is particularly challenging. We're grateful for Dr. Novick to be able to share with us some insights and some guidance for us. Dr. Novick.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say amen to the Rabbi's tefillot. I'd like to second the thank you, the modeh that our great leader, President Berman, shared. And I'd like to expand, and I'd like to start by saying thank you to all of the thousands of Jewish educators and educators in schools across the country who have turned on a dime to become distance educators. I'd like to say thank you to all of you parents. Take a deep breath. Who have become, as Rabbi Glasser said, administrators and teachers and homeschoolers. Just reflect on how much we've accomplished in such a short time and give yourself a well-earned pat on the back. Okay, now let's dig in. I want to share with you, I think, 5 pointers that hopefully will be helpful in our new abnormal. I don't think we can call this the new normal. It's just too abnormal. And that really leads to pointer number 1. We have to let go of our existing and old expectations. This is not a time for perfectionism. This is not a time to be thinking about, well, he used to have this many pages of schoolwork, or she used to spend 8 hours a day learning. Why can't she sit still now for, 3 hours of Zoom classes, etc.? It's time to let go of our houses looking perfect. And our, kitchen tables being neat, because our kitchen tables have now become our workspaces, our children's desks, and our Pesach prep area. So we have
Dr.
to be
Novick?
realistic. Yes.
I apologize for interrupting you so much. It's just we want to hear what you're saying so clearly. We're having a little bit of a reception challenge. Is it possible maybe you could try to shift your location a little bit and see if it comes across a little clearer?
I can try. Is this any better?
We'll make it work. Whatever you can do.
Okay.
But,
I'll try different places. I will walk around and we'll see. My regular house phone died, so I'm using the cell phone, and that may be why we're getting a little spotty. But so let go of your expectations and be flexible and fluid in these times that are changing at a breakneck pace. Number 2. Is that any better, Rabbi Glasser?
It's aspirationally better.
What's that?
It's not so much. If we can try a little bit more, but otherwise I think we'll then just we can hear most of what you're saying, but we don't get the full Dr. Novick experience.
Okay, I'm going to experiment. Okay. Second,
we're modeling how to be understanding.
Exactly. We're modeling flexibility now. The second point is accept that right now virtually everything is normal. Being anxious now is normal. Hold on one second. I'm going to switch to a different phone, and hopefully things will work better. Just one second. Is this better?
It's a little better, yeah.
Okay. So accept that everything right now is normal. Being anxious is normal. your child not learning in the way that they had been learning in the past, not being as diligent with their schoolwork. That's normal under these circumstances. You or your child not sleeping or eating in the same way that you had been. All of that is normal. We are dealing with a time of rapid transition, and none of us are going to be our old selves. We're going to have to get used to things being a little bit different or a lot different. Now, this is going to seem like an oxymoron, but the next pointer is to create routines and structures. Even in this time of rapid change, one of the things that helps all human beings, and children especially, is stability and routine. Think about a schedule for the day. I've seen so many clever family schedules posted on Facebook. Before Shabbat, I saw many families, maybe even Rabbi Glasser posted one, that posted their family Shabbaton schedule, where minyan would be, and exactly as Rabbi Leibowitz shared with us, the room was set with rows of chairs and with the mechitza, all ready for the family to be together. Create routines and structures. It doesn't need to be elaborate. Maybe pick 2 things that happen every day at a particular time. Or pick certain days of the week, because we're going to be in this for a while. So maybe make Monday music madness, when there's always going to be a dance party and a music lesson. Tuesdays for travel, where you'll always share virtual journeys at 10 a.m. each morning. Wednesday for word games. But any kind of structure or routine will help all of us. My next pointer, and it's hard, but it's so important, is to make sure as you are scheduling and as you are creating routines that you build in downtime for everyone. You find ways to connect that are not about the business of your daily living, that are not about the educational paradigm, that are just about having fun. That's learning too, whether it's going out in your backyard and throwing a ball around, or playing a game of Uno, or telling jokes, or something that is just freewheeling and fun. Try to find time for that in your schedule. Realize that that fun time is not just for your children. It also represents self-care for you. It allows you to be with your children in those glorious moments where you are not teacher, you are not disciplinarian, you are not the person giving structure or reason to their world. You are just someone enjoying with them. And that will be an investment in all of your resources. The last thing I want to suggest is one of the things we know about the human spirit in times of challenge is how much we need to make meaning and how much we need to feel that we are making a difference. I happened to see on the news tonight the story of, and please God, it should only happen fast, the first trials of vaccines in Seattle. They're very preliminary, and they say it will take a very long time before we have a cure or a response to this virus. But one of the women who volunteered to be a healthy subject in the trial of the vaccines explained that in this time when you feel so powerless, she felt wonderful that she could do something. We need to think about, with our children at home with us, how we can tap into that, how we can help them feel that they're doing something. Maybe they can write cards or design cards that are going to go to elderly patients in nursing homes who can no longer have visitors. Maybe they are going to create a read aloud. They're going to read a storybook and record it so that children, younger children who are at home and bored, have something to watch. Maybe it's helping you in the kitchen, or helping package things for Pesach, or helping coordinate. Heaven knows they're all better online than we are, helping us coordinate schedules and emails and things that help our communities continue to run as we face this challenge. But the bottom line is, help them to feel like they're making a difference. If you are volunteering in some way, if you are engaged in projects in your community, see if there are ways that you can share that with them, that you can model for them what you are doing to help and how they could be part of it as well. And finally, realize that in this new abnormal, we are, as we've always been, role models for our children. They're watching us 24/7, but now more than ever, because we are not leaving the house at 9 a.m. and coming back sometime later. We are not separate from them virtually ever. Most of us are living our lives in our home quarters all together now, all the time. That means that how we behave, how we model calm, reassurance is extremely important for them. It means that we have to be the grown-up all the time. It's hard work, but we can do it. We've already done wonders. I wish everybody chizuk and health.
Thank you so much, Dr. Novick. Thank you so much. Our final presentation is from Dr. David Pelcovitz, who holds the Gwendolyn and Joseph Straus Chair in Psychology and Jewish Education at the Azrieli Graduate School of Jewish Education and Administration. And Dr. Pelcovitz has been a rock of guidance and of perspective and of insight in so many aspects of this crisis, as he has in our communities and so many other things. And we are very blessed to have him at Yeshiva University, and we ask him to share with us some guidance in how we can cope personally for ourselves with this new reality. Dr. Pelcovitz.
Okay, sorry for the confusion. Keep thinking that it's a metaphor for something that's going on here, to feel in some ways muted and unable to communicate in the same way that we're so used to. Okay, let me come to make a few key points. First of all, I'm just so struck by the power of gratitude as the recurring theme that we've been hearing from everybody. And what I find is running through my mind is some of the research that was so powerful after 9/11. Families that I worked with after 9/11 who experienced horrific loss. It turns out that as we worked with them over time, over the coming years after 9/11, what the research showed is those who were able to put gratitude for what they had front and center, as opposed to being caught in the quicksand of negative emotions, as understandable as they were, they had a far quicker recovery over time. And I think we need to keep that incredible wisdom in mind. A few core points here. Number one is what I've been hearing a lot since we last spoke, which I agree that feels like a lifetime ago, is that for many people, for many younger people, this is their first experiences with a major challenge that nobody could protect them from, especially generations that have come of age with parents who were able to protect them from having to face any kind of ongoing challenge. There's now a very real challenge that none of us are able to necessarily have answers for. And what I'm seeing in response to that is actually a tremendous amount of stress and a tremendous amount of fear and even panic, but also, on the flip side, growth and tremendous ability to respond to support in a way that wasn't necessarily evident a little bit earlier. Let me share with you a few core points. Number one there's a fascinating study that came out a few days ago. Now, I don't know how empirically valid this is, but it certainly seems like something that I find fascinating. They found that in China that divorce rates have risen sharply following the mandatory coronavirus home quarantine. So as soon as the home quarantine was lifted in various provinces in China, there was an incredible explosion of young people filing for divorce. One office saw over 300 couples applying for divorces in the period that immediately followed the 3-week home quarantine, and that was echoed throughout the whole country of China. And it became such an avalanche that they had to close the offices to try to get people to slow down and understand that this is a temporary kind of, hopefully, temporary kind of tension. So that's the first point. And the answer to that, I hope, is that we hopefully, even though I'm sure that it is very stressful and trying on many of our relationships in terms of having this enforced connection to a spouse, to children, to grandparents, it's also an incredible opportunity for self-expansion and for getting to know each other better. And that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that to the extent that marriages grow and become enriched and deepened when we're able to take that threat and change it into a challenge. I'm just reminded of one of the dialects, in one of the Chinese dialects, the word symbol for crisis is the word symbol for danger and for opportunity. So again, we're living in a time of danger, but we're also living in a time of incredible opportunity. Next point that I find myself going to over and over again in the last number of days is just trying to use the wisdom of acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a very Jewish form of dealing with extreme ongoing stress, and to work on attempting to see unpleasant feelings related to the coronavirus as just feelings, not necessarily reality. To accept that parts of life are hard and that that's okay, and that negative feelings are an inevitable part of life, and we could best deal with them by accepting them, learning from them, and then acting on them in accordance with our larger goals. In terms of chesed, I can't emphasize enough how important I believe it is to remember the incredible power of chesed, which is the ultimate antidote. When people are in for a prolonged kind of self-imposed quarantine or isolation, it turns out that to the extent that we could remember why we do it and see the chesed aspects of it, it makes all the difference in the world. So, for example, in one study, when elderly individuals volunteer and they're followed over the course of a number of years, they have a 40% lower probability of dying in a given year than matched controls. It helps our immune system to do chesed. And one of my favorite studies on this, 132 patients with multiple sclerosis, assigned to 2 groups, okay? The group that was asked to provide unconditional positive regard and support to members of the other group, even though they were equally sick. That group, the group that was asked to do chesed for the other equally sick group, randomly assigned to either be a giver or receiver, the givers showed between 3 and 7-fold more improvements in the waxing and waning symptoms of their MS. Psychological benefits included increased self-awareness, confidence, and fewer symptoms of depression. I could go on and on with studies like that, but I wanted to spend a little bit of time in the few minutes remaining to me talking about the Iowa study, because I think that as we're settling in for a longer-term kind of challenge, going on for at least a number of months, according to most estimates now, I've seen other people compare it to the Iowa study, which I think is a very helpful set of research to guide us along. This was a study done after the farm crisis in the 1980s, where a large number of people who were used to living very comfortable lives suddenly lost everything that they had. And a very high level and very sophisticated research group followed these families for a generation, looking at what were the core ingredients of resilience in looking at these people. And I think that it all, I think, very much informs what we're talking about. So number one is communication, naming the monster. That to the extent that people were allowed to and enabled to do what we're doing right now, which is to talk about what's upsetting us, to name the monster, to talk about it, is to conquer it. So people who were able, for example, after the Yom Kippur War, to express their emotions, mothers who lost their husbands, and were able to cry and deal with their pain, and were given Yeshur and license to be able to talk about their pain, they were much more resilient, and their children were much more resilient when they were looked at over the next generation. Anything that takes us from passive to active. There's that beautiful thought of Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch on Kanesher Yorakino Gozol Yirafe, finding that why is it that in Eis Sarah we're compared to an eagle, and as Rashi brings down, and as we know, what's different about eagles than any other living thing is that when a baby eagle is in danger, it has to take an active role in its own Yeshua, because the mother hovers over the nest, and that baby eagle has to hop onto the mother's back. And that going from passive to active has very real kind of implications for us, to the extent that we could ask our older children to be involved in required helpfulness and in doing chesed for our younger children. To the extent that we could give everybody as active a role as we can, it should be another way of being able to build resilience. And then ultimately, the correlates to resilience is putting family first as protective, parental connection to the community was found in the Iowa studies to be predictive of resilience. And the bottom line is what I want to end with is a beautiful thought from the Maharal as we're getting closer and closer to Pesach. He talks about the difference between egg matzah, matzah ashira, and regular matzah. And he says the following. The Maharal in verse Hashem says, Ki ha'ani ein lo ela atzmo, ein lo lamon rak atzmo v'gufo, saying that the essence of that lesson, the Maharal tells us, is that a poor person has only himself, doesn't have to have his self-concept mixed in to anything else other than his own sense of authenticity and own sense of connection. She'ein inyan ha'geula rak sheyosei ve'ein lo shum sira fel zulaso. Okay? Unlike in Eved, the Maharal says, she'eino omed ba'atzmo v'yesh lo sira fel zulaso. Okay? And he goes on to say that the essence of this part of the lesson of Pesach is that we have to look and try to reflect and understand the essence of who we are, the essence of our authentic self, not caring as much about what others care, what others are telling us. And this is a golden opportunity from that. Rabbi Rothwack, in a class that we co-taught earlier today, he shared, and it's on YU Torah, a beautiful thought. He talked about how this is an opportunity from going from alone together to together alone. He says we've been living a life until now of, because of our devices, being alone together. as Dr. Sherry Turkle from MIT often talks about in her works on the impact of how isolating our devices could be. Now we have the gift of being together alone. That's the challenge. How can we be together alone? How can we use this as an opportunity for self-reflection and true connection in a way that we know is going to make us ultimately grow from this and tune into the gratitude for what we have and tune into all of the beautiful lessons that our wonderful community and the wisdom of Chazal teach us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pelcovitz, and we thank everyone on the call, the presenters and our participants, for your patience with some of our technical issues. We are very proud to share that there will be many more opportunities to study and to learn and to benefit from the scholars of Yeshiva University. You could feel free to visit yutorah.org, where you will encounter hundreds of thousands of shiurim and so many different opportunities to learn from great masters. And we are working on a number of different programs that will make the broader faculty of Yeshiva University available to the community so that we can all benefit from the wisdom and from the scholarship of YU. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us, and we wish everyone a safe and a healthy evening, continued hatzlacha in all of your endeavors in confronting this challenge. And as Dr. Pelcovitz said, together we will ultimately persevere, and we are here for you in any way that we could be helpful. We wish everyone a wonderful night.